Hello.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. I'm great.
Good. So I'm the Zoom room host. So I'll once we get people signed in here, I'll introduce the title of your presentation and then you get to take it from there.
Take it away, huh?
Take it away. Yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Okay.
give obviously people a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Sure they didn't have it's
I
strange doing this
saw,
with international time difference. So for
I
some
saw
it's like
Dean Mr. Hazen had a call at this time as well. So we'll see what kind of attendance we get running up against the big dogs, right?
Yeah, he's not that great.
He's not all that.
Yeah. I get to so I work at Carroll.
Okay.
And actually Ryan's my fiance, so I get to say that.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, great to meet you. We are, of course, big fans of his because we love
Yes.
his outspoken nature on the Twitter tweets, right?
Oh yes, he's big on what you do. So
Hashtag turn it off. One of my
yes,
favorites.
yes.
Well,
So
great to meet you.
yeah, nice to meet you. I'm really looking forward to this. He very graciously gave me presentations he knew I'd be interested in.
Okay, good deal. Good deal.
So
And I think I remember having a conversation with Hart last year.
ooh,
So far we're doing pretty good.
yeah.
So who were you with last year? Same place?
Well, last year we were called Urkund, URKUND.
Yes, I did talk to you last year.
We'll go through that. So we gave Urkund all of about 6 months in North America, right? And then completely changed our name, and we get to do it all over again. So what's better than introducing yourself once? Let's introduce ourselves twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both times with names that are spelled strangely.
You're gonna have to take that up with marketing, right? I don't.
Our original I get though more than Urkund.
It's better. Urkund
Yeah.
sounds like you got something caught in your throat.
But our makes it sound like, yeah, we're going to do this collaboratively and that's okay.
So we get our original some. We get the people who really try to class it up and turn it French, and it turns into original. We get the owl on the end, but I maybe I should be pronouncing it. I just say original, right? But yeah, that put that extra U in there for some reason.
Let's give one more minute and then we can jump in. This will be great because I have lots of I want to hear all about this. I have not full disclosure, I didn't really even start using Urkund even though Carol uses it. I just have never got into Turnitin for obvious reasons, and so it's not in my pedagogy, but it needs to be because I find that students are taking advantage of that.
So you know what? That's what this is going to be more about. For the sake of folks like Hart, right, who have some idea of who we are. I want to try to keep this a little bit less about, hey, here's who we are, and a little bit more about, what's changed, right? In the last 18 months, this whole arena has just flipped on its head, so I want to chat through that. And then it's like a 20-minute PowerPoint. And then after that, it's jumping around inside of Moodle, jumping around inside of the analysis report, and just seeing what it looks like and having a conversation, right? So
yep, great.
If it's three of us, I almost even find that, quite honestly, to be more interactive. It's when you get the huge groups where everybody thinks somebody else is going to ask the question, and then you get no questions at all. So
well, why don't we jump in? The other nice thing, and this is what's so great about doing it on Zoom, although I can't wait till we're in person again, but it is being recorded. So these will be posted. So a lot of people will benefit from this presentation. So
Perfect. Cool. Good.
until we all master being in 5 places at once.
So let's do two things before we go. Well, we're already being recorded, right? I was going to say before we get all formal about it. Hart, remind me, where are you? What institution are you with?
I'm at Southern Oregon University.
Okay.
And we play Carol in football.
Oh, wait, what institution, Hart?
Southern Oregon University.
Oh, okay. Where is that?
Ashland.
Oh gosh. Yes, I know that. I should have known that. Sorry, I'm an Oregonian.
It's okay. So and I met Ryan at the National Moot in Philadelphia in 2019, and because he was sitting in front of me on the train that went from the airport to the hotel, and he was dinking around looking at his phone doing different mapping stuff. And so I asked him if he was local, if he was visiting. He says, no, I'm in town for a Moodle convention. I'm like, of course you are. And of course you would assume that anybody would know what that meant. So
He does.
he's so funny. So I ended up hanging out because I was there by myself. So I ended up hanging out with him and the Carol kids.
Oh,
And, they just adopted me and we had a wonderful time.
oh, that's wonderful.
Really, but he also knew, when I said Southern, he said, oh, the Raiders. I'm like, what? And then he told me he was from Carolina. I said, oh yeah, you guys just whooped us in football last week.
That's an absolutely hilarious story. The part where you said that he was like, oh yeah, like everybody just knows what Moodle is, right? Like, oh yeah.
It was, I didn't know it yet, but it was the quintessential Ryan.
Yep.
So I'm still waiting for my first in-person Ryan experience. So my boss, Eric, who's been with Original for a little bit longer than I have. I'm at like 18 or 20 months. He's been here just over 2 years now. I think he's gotten to meet Ryan in person. He had a little bit more time before we all shut down, right? But
yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
All right.
Yeah, like I said, 20-minute quick presentation, then we'll chat some. So I'm
great.
I'm good if you are.
Awesome.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So I will ask you then. So I did this earlier. Oh, you know what I'm going to do first? Hang on, not sharing yet. Close this back up. Let me close out my Outlook and Teams and all that junk first, right? Minimal of disruptions. There we go. All right, let's share this screen. Hart, I think you're still unmuted, so I'll ask you if you can see my stuff just fine.
Let me look again. Yeah, I'm seeing all kinds of stuff.
Okay, so if I pull this up now, you can see my presentation.
Yeah, looks like a presentation.
Perfect. And I promise we'll keep it pretty light, pretty short. And at any time, if either of you want to jump in, please do, because 15 slides of just me chatting, I know can get to be taxing, especially when it's me. So please interrupt when you can. But just to get started, get the formalities out of the way. I am the director of sales for what was the Western US and now has expanded into Western Canada and is also part of Latin America. So kind of just everything west of me, because I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. So gateway to the west, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So I've been with Erkind since becoming Original since December of 2019. So got about 4 months under the belt before the whole world got turned upside down. But this is who we are, right? So Erkind is a Swedish company, born in 2000. So about 20 years old, 21 years old. I should be able to do that math, right? And then PlagueScan is a German company out of Cologne, Germany. Erkind acquired PlagueScan about 9 months ago, and we came to market as Original about 6 months ago. So we got about a year under our belts as Erkind here in North America, having just been acquired by a new private equity fund in Stockholm, looking to go global. We brought the Erkind name to North America and then changed it and reinvented ourselves all over again as Original. So that's who we are. A little bit of background. We are #2 worldwide in the plagiarism prevention space. As you have probably already guessed by now, the 800-pound gorilla in every conversation we have is Turnitin, right? They've done a wonderful job of making themselves very, very present in North America. That is basically how we are everywhere else. Very, very to the point where even in places like Sweden and most of the Nordics, we're looked at as nearly a governmental offering, you know? So very, very into the higher education market, especially in the Nordics, Europe, and then India. 6,000 plus customers now, 110 plus countries. And then another one that's kind of fun, processed in basically any language that you can input on a keyboard, right? So we've actually found similarities in language and submissions written in Klingon. If it can be written on a keyboard and it exists in our repository, we're going to find it. So, you know, that's just a little bit about who we are. Here's just a little bit more, and I'm going to leave this up for like a split second, you know, in our integrations. But of course, today we're speaking about Moodle. So I want to show off instead how we integrate inside of Moodle and where we integrate and how you can utilize Original inside of Moodle. That's in assignments and chats. And now I've got you guys over the one over here. I think that one says quizzes, and it does when I move my little thing around. And then also our workshops and forums. So anywhere inside of those 5 activities inside of Original or inside of Moodle, you're able to activate Original to check for similarity. We'll get into exactly what sort of similarity and other functionality we have inside of the tool in a little bit. So I know, Kat, you're a little more toward the beginning of this whole introduction, so we'll definitely make sure we cover that as well. But for the intent of this presentation, just to try to keep it fresh and not go through a whole long thing about just who we are and what we do, what I really want to talk about today is academic integrity as a whole and how to safeguard it, what we're trying to do to help safeguard it, and how it's changed, especially in the last 18 to 24 months, right? It's everybody thinks of plagiarism as similar blocks of text or paraphrasing those blocks of text, or maybe collaboration inside of your own classroom. Yes, of course, we're going to look at that. But it's evolved, right? And some of the places it's evolved, and some of the things that are going on are it's crazy. You know, I mean, to think of where it's headed is nuts. And we see places like UC Berkeley, 400% increase in cheating allegations. And I've taken from a few of these different articles things that really spoke to me. Academic, look at the fabrication, plagiarism. What is plagiarism? It's all those things I just talked about. And then there's just this umbrella policy of academic dishonesty. So many of these academic dishonesty or academic integrity codes that are out there now are outdated at this point, right? I mean, because it's constantly evolving, you know. So there's things like Texas A&M. I found a couple here. Look at this. So entire exams that were posted on homework help sites that have become synonymous with cheating. I won't call any of them out by name, but there's at least 2 or 3 that I'm sure you're familiar with. There are, again, called out from this article, hundreds of examples where students actually answered questions inside of quizzes faster than they could have read the question itself. I mean, it's prevalent, right? That's Texas A&M. We'll jump to another one. This is CUNY. Students coming in with failing averages and returning perfect papers. You know, it just keeps coming. Another one. People logging on who aren't the students at all. You know, this gets into that contract cheating and ghostwriting. We're going to talk about that some more here in just a moment. One more. It's all over the place. This is U Chicago, where they have an academic honor pledge. You know, it's coming for everybody. So from there, we'll move into why they're cheating, why they're plagiarizing. And there's a number of these too. And I'm going to pull up a bunch of them. We'll just hit on a few of the smaller, a few of them. Without updating that academic honor pledge or your academic dishonesty, your phrase, everything else, they may not even know, the student may not think that you're aware of what ghostwriting and contract cheating are. So why would they be afraid of you catching it or the detection of that if they don't think you even know what it is, right? And again, we can get into a whole different conversation about whether this is used punitively or if you use it in more of a formative use case, which is where we prefer the, and as Kat mentioned earlier, the pedagogy of it all, right? But for the sake of this conversation, if they don't think you know what it is, then they're not certainly afraid of being caught for it. Maybe it's a English as a second language student and they need help, or maybe they don't think that being caught or being punished for something like this is going to be taken very seriously. Of course, we think of things like you're under the gun as far as time goes. You don't understand the subject. You think this is normal. All students are doing this sort of thing. Maybe it's all built around what we just talked about up here. Maybe it's all about not being really taught what academic integrity is at your institution. Last one I'll say, the big one that comes right across the top, everything kind of falls into this, right? Students are under grave amounts of pressure. Life is very complex. That hasn't gotten any easier in the last 18 months, right? So this is what you're all dealing with. This is what we're dealing with, and this is why, again, pedagogically, we're trying to bring tools to the fore that help students to understand where there might be shortcomings in their writing and otherwise. So, this is another great example of the ones that I brought up here. No fear of detection, academic integrity, all these things. This is a great example. This is TICSA down in Australia. They actually imposed governmentally penalties and fines for ghostwriting and contract cheating at the higher education level. All of these essay mills that were advertising, via Google or whatever else in Australia, essentially effectively disappeared. So I mean, again, bringing this to the fore, making it something that people are aware of. Now they're aware that you're aware, and that's a big part of it too. And that has nothing to do with our solution. That's an institution kind of conversation. I will stop there for just a second because we'll get into more of like our offering and what Original does and what the content is that we're scrubbing against. Any questions? Does any of this bring up, does it jog something in your memory, Kat or Hart, that you want to really dig into about why they plagiarize or things that are coming or anything else?
It's funny, when I saw perceived seriousness, I actually anticipated it would be their perceived seriousness of looking or appearing perfect in a course. So how, I just wonder those pressures and complexities of life, but there's also coming with that, I think, this, we've made the stakes seem so high. Every assignment seems like if they don't do well on it, their entire life will fall apart, right? So it's just interesting how I interpreted that when I saw it on there. But then I could also
I'm going to go back here, Kat, because I want to say, because I've read all these articles multiple times. I want to say it was inside of this one from Texas A&M, or maybe it was this one here, where they talked about that very same thing. They said, right, well, what if we don't have 4 major exams and instead we have more minor exams on a weekly basis? And then, right, you're exactly right. It doesn't seem as serious, okay, if I don't get a 98% on this one, it's not the end. That's it's a great point too, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that don't have anything to do with original that, you know, could also help to combat these issues we're having. Great point. Great point. So moving from that side over to just a little bit more of who we are, you know, in a quick education session here. The way that the system works, right, is that a student submits their paper via Moodle or another LMS or even our web inbox, which is basically just our way of saying they drop it into, you know, drag your file here, and then we'll crawl it and return a report for you. The way it works is that goes in and we check it against our repository, which is the internet, scholarly journals, and then academic publications, and then lastly, student materials. To break this down for you a little bit, 70 to 75% of the matches that we find are against the internet. That number is only growing larger, right? You know, when we first came into existence or turned it in, when it first happened, the internet wasn't near the animal that it is now, right? And you leaned a whole lot more on other student materials. When I was in college, I was in a fraternity and we had the file cabinet up in the attic, right? Where all the old tests and stuff were. I didn't use them. I told them that was a terrible idea. But, you know, that's where this student materials thing lives, right? I mean, and since then, the internet has just grown and grown and grown and grown. 70 to 75% of matches we find are against the internet. 10 to 15% are these scholarly journals and academic publications. This is just a few of them. And what we do is we subscribe to their content. We pay for that, and on a quarterly or biannual basis, we're ingesting that into our system. That's 10 to 15%. And then the last part is now that part that used to be such a major factor in all this, the student materials. 10 to 15% there as well. Half of that being from inside of your own institution, half of that being from the other institutions that live underneath the original umbrella. One thing I will say there, a caveat on that student material side, because not just because we're European in nature and we comply to all of the GDPR standards, that data, no matter what institution it comes from, does not belong to us. To use Carroll College as an example, at any point, if Carroll College says, get our stuff out of your global repository, only keep it in a separate repository for Carroll College, or return it to us, or delete it immediately, that will happen, right? Those are all privacy standards set in place that we subscribed to even before GDPR came into play in 2018. What that is, the technical term, you are the controller of your data, not original. Because of that, we see this student material number even going down even further, right? Because our repository isn't growing by the leaps and bounds that, you know, maybe some others do. Questions on the content? Okay. I won't jump to this. This is upcoming. There's some upcoming functionality on here. This is what our dashboard somewhat looks like right now. We're gonna at least look through what our dashboard currently looks like and kind of get a feel for, you know, what our reporting looks like. But for now, I'll jump out of the presentation. We're doing wonderfully on time because there's still about 20 minutes left here. I'll show you really quickly just Moodle and how you would retrieve a paper inside of Moodle. And then I'll show you really quickly what the report looks like. And then I just hope that we have a chance to bounce conversation topics off of one another. So if I jump over here, here's our Moodle sandbox at Original. As far as actually turning on Original for a course, that is completely in line. I'm going to move this down a little bit so I can put you all across the top. And to actually enable Original for a course, turn my editing on, add an assignment. And you can see this, right? It followed me over to Chrome, right? You're not still looking at my, Okay, good. Sometimes it just stays stuck on the PowerPoint. So As you'll see here, everything is the same as it normally would be inside of your Moodle course. We don't change any of the, you know, where you do your due dates or rubrics or anything else. We don't concern ourselves with that. As far as rubrics and grading and everything else goes, that's still going to live inside of your Moodle instance. The only place where we live is right down here in the original plagiarism plugin. You go in as you create your assignment, you'd say, how often do we want to show a similarity score to the student? If we leave this on always and up above, we've said that they can send as many submissions to this assignment as they want, right? So if I say here, let's see, there's an unlimited in here too, right? Let me see.
Yeah, typically there isn't an unlimited for docs.
Okay, so it'll say 20 though, right? And that's nearly unlimited, right? So if you allow your student to submit 20 times, that formative use case, now we're going to provide to them a similarity score or a similarity report as many times as they submit. So this is where the pedagogical side of things comes into play, Kat, right? So they submit the first time and they get a score back of 50%. And then they see that I match a block of text here, 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 and here. Yes, I cited it. Yes, I cited it. Oh, I either forgot my citation here, or I thought I understood this subject matter enough where I was going to write my own original block of text, but it's just like what was written online, right? So it'll help you to understand those things before you get to your final submission, right? So that's where the pedagogy of it comes into play. A couple more things to call out down here. This is the big one. Add the submissions to the original database. This is where you as an instructor can decide, do we want these assignments to live in that original global repository or not? Or do we want them to never live there in the first place? You can select that right off the top and say, no, don't add these. Again, we're not the control of your data, you are. And then you simply save and return to the course. Once you've done that, you're able to go back out. I'll jump back over here. And if I go into one of the assignments that I've already created, and I apologize because I jump from one LMS to the next constantly. So I always have to remember my clicks, right? Let's click here on term paper 1. Okay, so we have a few submissions here. One of them being down here. I believe, because we're in our sandbox, that I don't have it pulled up right now, but what you'll see is here are the student submissions to this assignment. When you're going to grade it, when you're going to mark it up, when you're going to work with rubrics, that's all going to continue to happen inside of Moodle. I want to call that out because that is a difference between ourselves and Turnitin. Turnitin will recommend that you utilize their Feedback Studio tool, which brings plagiarism, potential plagiarism, the grading, the feedback, everything all into one bucket. We prefer to live a little bit more in the background than that, right? So we'll provide to you, and I apologize, it's not right here. We'll provide you a little score that'll be color coded, and it'll say 14% or 18% or whatever it might be. Unless you feel the need to click on that to go out and view a report that looks like this one, we almost prefer you leave it alone. You trust that our system is doing the job that it should. It's returning to you a score that you either feel comfortable with or not. And if you do feel comfortable with it, you grade and do everything else the same way you always would without concerning yourself with any potential plagiarism at all. You get that one that's got a big number next to it and you want to dive into that, you'd click on that. And again, I apologize, it's not here right this second. And you're taken out to our report that looks like this one. Just a wee bit different than the one that I showed inside of the report. And that's because of this authorship recognition functionality that is coming soon. And because that's what I wanted to speak about so much today, you know, the way that plagiarism and academic dishonesty is kind of evolving, I wanted to at least show this to you. So this authorship recognition tool is coming, as I mentioned, and that looks something like this. We're going to look at Kat your first submission, and then your second submission and your third submission, we're going to start to get a feel for how long your sentences are. What type of, what kind of rare words do you use in your writing? What does your punctuation look like? And we'll put together a profile. And then from one paper to the next, we can say that, oh, reading level, this dot here, looks to be very similar to the rest of Kat's submissions. However, sentence length is much different. We're not to the point yet where we can say via this radar graph, Kat, Hart, take a longer look at this. This might be someone else writing this paper. And that's why we're not live with it yet, but this is what's coming, right? And I wanted to show that off first before we jump back into what we have today, which of course has a beta original metrics inside of it. But the submission details, a link to the actual proof source document for disaster recovery and accessibility reasons. Through the middle, we'll provide you the similarity score for this document, then the average document for this instructor. The reason we do that is because we're often asked, what's the number? Steve, what's the number? If it's over 40%, is it plagiarized? If it's under 25%, are we good? You can't do that, right? If it's a paper about the War of 1812, that number is going to be a whole lot larger than it would be if it's a paper about my vacation with my wife and kids, right? So it's a living, breathing thing, right? So we prefer to provide you with that, that baseline on the right-hand side, and then you can decide for yourself, 4% delta, do I need to jump into this particular submission further? Okay, I'm going to switch reports because there's another one that'll show off a little bit more of the matching text and everything that I prefer to walk through. So let's jump over to this one, and we'll do this for about 5 minutes, and then we'll just open it up and have a conversation. Really quickly, matching text rather than the Turnitin model where each source is in a different color. All of ours, for accessibility reasons, are highlighted in orange. Malintent, potentially trying to fool the system, like you can look on YouTube and try to find any number of ways to try to fool the system like ours. White space manipulation, character manipulation, anything like that. We're going to call that out for you in purple. And then our cross-language matching, which I think I mentioned earlier, is where my English submission on the left is a 73% match against this Spanish Wikipedia page on the right. We've got 12 instances of cross-language matching here. These jump from Spanish to French to Danish. What if all 12 of them were Spanish and it's a Spanish speaker? Then you may have a reason to have a conversation with your student about maybe they have been utilizing those sources. It's easier to show off the similarity between what's on the left and what's on the right when we're speaking in English, of course. So I'll show you that in just a moment. What I want to call out right here, though, is it's an important misnomer to debunk. We're not identifying plagiarism. We're identifying text similarity. And the reason why I called it out right here is because you as an instructor are in charge of figuring out or deciding if something is plagiarism. If you don't know Danish, you don't know that this is plagiarized, right? So that's why we have to tell you, we're only calling out what we think is similar. We're not calling it plagiarism. So let's jump back out, and I'll jump into the entire document view really quickly, and I'll just show you a couple examples of English to English similarity. Here's one that matches at 90%. Only the words in yellow or red are different. Everything else is the exact same. This happens to match against a student artifact that lives in our repository or one of 3 other sources. If I click to view that next level, now we're matching against a Wikipedia article. When something matches at 90%, you would almost certainly see a citation on the left-hand side. At a 90% match, your student most likely did take that straight from Wikipedia and meant to cite it. If that's the case and it is cited properly, you can see our score of 47%. I say, nope, this is good. It's not a block of text, it's not plagiarism. We can take that out. And we've dropped to 43%. The next one, as I start to transition into a little bit of funny business inside of a student submission, the next one is a 50% match. This one you're going to have a few more questions about. And the reason why is because I took this again from Wikipedia, even though it lives in another student artifact. I took this block of text and I ran it through a paraphrasing tool like this one. If you are not familiar with tools like this living on the internet, put it in, told them I wasn't a robot, and they gave me back another block of text that looks mighty similar, but isn't the same. I go back over here, 50% match. Founded has become established. Immigrants has become settlers. Briefly has become quickly. At a 50% match, you're more likely to leave this inside of your report, right? Okay, 2 more of those, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Now we get into the purple, which is the malintent. Over here on the left-hand side, I've put an X in between each of these words. And you can see that very clearly inside of my report, right? But if I jump out to my actual document and I go down to that same block of text, there are no X's. And that's because just like YouTube taught me, I turned them all white, turned them all black, and now they pop up. Your student does this and saves it off as a PDF and sends it to you. You're unlikely to see that, right? We're going to call that out. We're going to tell you these words appear to be far too long. The way our technology works, we're not reading these as words. We're looking at every single character separately, and we think these characters as a long string look too similar to something else that belongs inside of our repository. One more of those, the very bottom, even more mischievous. I've replaced the A's, E's, and S's with special characters that look like A's, E's, and S's. If I go out to my document now, all of these words are misspelled because they're not A's, E's, and S's at all. And again, if your student saves this off as a PDF and submits that to you, you're going to be none the wiser. So just be aware, you know, there's things going on. We're working to combat them all. Combat is probably a really, really strong word. I try to avoid that when I can. We're trying to call them all to mind. Let's put it that way. So that's where we're at. You know, again, plagiarism prevention is where we live. No grading and feedback and markup and all of that kind of stuff. We prefer to leave that to Moodle. So I've left us about 8 minutes in our time, in our block of time here, to have a conversation. What questions or what did this jog in your memory, or things you want to chat through?
So I have a question about, so I have become a big fan of Google Docs with my students. And I actually have them just submit links on Moodle. And there's lots of reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with ease of grading, because if I have a class of, you know, and in a given semester, I can have 100 students, and I teach in the humanities. So that's a lot of Word documents to open, and just kind of, it sounds like I'm complaining, but it is like a total time saver. So anyway, is there a way I could, but it does, like, this isn't supported by Google Docs, right? Or like you couldn't. So remind me, the Google Docs extension is. Oh, I guess I could do it in an extension. Yeah, I have them just submit the link. So I don't have an extension. Does that make sense? They just share the document with me and give me a link.
Well, they could always do a save as. You can save a Google Doc as a Word doc or a PDF.
Right. I just don't want to make them
Yeah.
do 2 steps
Yeah,
for
well,
submission?
there's your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
what's-
that
what's
was my
the-
question though, is can they do Google Docs?
What is the post fix, or what, how, like instead of .docx, what is it for a Google Doc?
It doesn't have one.
They don't have one at all.
No,
Right.
no, it just lives online unless you save it as.
Okay. That's a great question, actually. 'Cause so as far as actual extensions go, docx, PDF, Pages, PowerPoint, Excel, we can handle all of those. Kat, I'm gonna make a note of that. I wish I had an immediate answer, since other folks might come through and want to find this. So I don't know. Maybe I can put it in the chat on our vendor page,
Oh, okay, yeah,
just in case anybody checks it out. So let's do that. Let me talk to the
Okay.
camera for a second, and
that's great.
if I get an answer, I'm going to put it on the page, and anybody can come over there and check that out. That's a great question. So
It's a big nut to crack.
provided
Yeah,
a link
That's what I was thinking.
to a Google Doc. Okay. I'll get an answer for that, and I will provide that on the original vendor page.
Yeah.
So that's a great question.
So,
Sounds like a nice one for you. So we'll see what we can do.
yeah, so
You're
we were
kind of a
really,
big deal if you're Ryan's fiance, right? We got to figure that out.
No,
gotta
don't
make
get
her
that,
happy.
don't get that rumor going.
so, so we were very surprised at, disappointed to hear that Erkin had been sold, right? It had been, that you guys had to change. And so I'm really happy to find out that you have a new name and you're still out there. So what's changed besides your name?
So I'll tell you a couple things, and it is worth mentioning inside of this presentation. Erkin was never sold. We acquired PlagueScan and came to market as Original. Original has been approached by Turnitin about a potential purchase, but there are several hurdles to clear before anything like that were to happen, across several different countries, and it is not moving quickly. So at this point, there is a little bit of a state of flux, but again, it's one of those things. We're having multiple conversations with partners of ours now about how we can move forward with that, right? If depending on which way it goes, right?
Yeah. Do we want to turn off recording?
So I think as long as there's no other questions, regarding the report or anything else, Hart, I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
I can stop recording. That's no problem.
Yeah.
All right. I'll just say thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Thanks, Hart, for being here.
absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
stop
appreciate it.
recording.
Thank you.